Okay, so I'm sorry, we should have done our introductions. We've met before. I'm the executive editor. Allie, have you met? You're on mute, girl. $5 fine.
I'm Allie Hinga. I am the managing editor at the Telegraph Herald. I've been in the role for about 6 months. Done a variety of editing roles at the Telegraph Herald, but actually when I started here, I'm the former education reporter. So
I know I've seen
a lot of school board members over the years. So
yeah.
And Sarah, I'm Bob Woodward. I'm the publisher of the Dubuque Telegraph Herald and vice president of community media for our company, and also since April the publisher of the Galena Gazette, which is where I am talking to you from today.
Okay, looks like we keep him in the basement, but he's at the Galena Gazette. So.
And my name is Dr. Sarah Jacobitz-Kizzier. Most folks here know me as Dr. Kizzier, as I've been working full-time as a family physician for nearly a decade here in Dubuque. Before that, I was a family doctor in Iowa City for 3 years. And before that, I was jumping around in the Midwest for different parts of my own education. And during that time, I did get married to my husband, who's a lifelong Dubuquer, who lived in Dubuque from 1983 to 1997. So we ended up going to college in the same place, got married, and have 3 kids who are current students at Dubuque Community Schools.
And your kids are at Hempstead and Roosevelt?
Yep. I have an 11th grader at Hempstead. Her name's Sophia. She's the one that loves to sing. I have an 8th grader at Roosevelt named Lyndon Kizzier, and she loves to play the tuba. She's also in Scouts. And then my son, Henry, is in 4th grade at Eisenhower Elementary. So much of my volunteer time is spent in the local schools, whether it's helping as with games in the classroom, doing math on Mondays, whether it's spent working with band kids, whether it's helping with costumes for local community theater. That is mostly where my social network is currently. Other fun things I like to do on the weekend involve being part of the Tri-State Wind Symphony, for which I play the clarinet, as well as my daughter Lyndon, who plays the tuba.
Nice. And then tell us a little bit about how being around the schools, volunteering in the schools, having kids in schools, put you on this path to your interest in joining the school board.
So my mom and dad were both public school teachers. And so I really grew up in a family of educators. I myself, as a young teenager, attended school board meetings with the Papillion La Vista School District in Nebraska, which was the fastest growing district in the state of Nebraska, hence why my parents wanted to move our new family there. They needed to pass a bond referendum because the population of the schools was going up, and to plan for a healthy future for that community, they needed to pass a bond. So when I met my husband, Casey Kizzier, the Dubuquer, he was initially a musician, not being trained as a teacher, but as he pursued his own college path, decided that it was in his heart to be an educator, and he's been substitute teaching. My typical day-to-day life involves a busy family practice clinic where I take care of newborn babies, children, teenagers, and adults of all ages, but half my day is spent caring for children and teens. And so whether I'm at work or I'm home with my own family, including my husband, or even the social things I engage with on the weekend, my life is completely surrounded by folks who are invested in education. So many things have changed over the last 5 years, whether it was COVID pandemic or the more recent legal changes in the state of Iowa. I feel like I'm well positioned right now to take my advocacy even to the next level. whether I win the school board election or not, I will continue working as a busy family doctor here in Dubuque, Iowa. But I do feel like my own life experiences and my professional experiences working every day with students make me rather ideally positioned to be a really good advocate on the school board.
Is that how you see the role of a school board member, to advocate for the students?
I certainly feel like students are the most important piece, whether that's in regard to particular curriculum, whether that's in regard to meeting their social or emotional needs, whether it is the role of ensuring that the school is a safe environment for learning and going through the typical developmental milestones that we expect in preteens and teens. I feel like that is the heart of it. Certainly, there's many other roles that a school board member needs to fulfill. You need to make sure that you are supporting teachers as the experts in curriculum design and engagement. Part of what the school board needs to be able to do is understand teacher concerns, working with the teachers union to figure out what keeps quality teachers engaged and retained in the district. And then the third part of this, of course, is a board member has to be responsible to the folks that elect them, that are taxpayers, that live in the district, that expect a high standard for their public schools and have potentially additional vested interest in making the community a place that is very healthy from a business standpoint, where families want to move to and want to stay. So I feel like all three of those parts are necessary to be a committed, collaborative, forward-thinking board member.
Okay, just a point, jumping back, did you say, does your husband sub in the Dubuque School District?
Yes, my husband, Casey, has been subbing for Dubuque Community Schools for several years. He just finished up a 7-week long-term sub covering for the gym teacher at Eisenhower Elementary. So all of those blistering hot days in August, when Superintendent Amy Hawkins was making the rounds and checking the temperatures in the different buildings, that's where my husband was, in the Eisenhower Gymnasium, which was initially not air conditioned when schools were having to let out early because it wasn't a place where learning was happening. They subsequently have gotten some air conditioning, so it wasn't over 100 degrees in the gym by the time they got some of the HVAC work figured out. But I am concerned that there remains 6 buildings in the Dubuque Community School system that are not air conditioned, and I feel like this has a detrimental effect on student learning.
So that segues nicely into the bond issue. I know that you're in support of it. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe whether you've been discussing that at all with constituents as you're in the role of running for the board?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm unequivocally for passage of the bond referendum. I feel pride in having 2 middle schools with Washington and Jefferson both turning 100 this year, in the fact that students have been learning in these buildings for generations. And so I feel like you can both value their experience and people's appreciation for the love for what they had as students or as parents or grandparents with their kids in those buildings, and yet recognize that the high cost of maintaining these buildings, making them ADA accessible, making the HVAC situation as good as it can be as we continue to face days with extremely high temperatures. And yet the high cost of maintaining these 2 buildings is truly holding the Dubuque district back. With the committee work, I feel confident that the size of the building and the location of the building is necessary for Dubuque students. all students deserve an equitable educational environment. And in addition to that, if you listen carefully to the ideas proposed by the architects who designed the new middle school, a lot of time is spent preparing students for a learning environment that is well suited to future needed skills. Spaces set aside for cooperative learning environments, for breakout sessions, so that coursework can be done collaboratively during the day, rather than students crammed into packed classrooms and sent home with the expectation that they're going to do hours of homework outside of the school day, which during the pandemic we learned doesn't always happen. There are other parts of the bond issue that make a lot of sense to me, whether that's the HVAC in the buildings, purchasing new land for prospective growth of the district, the softball fields, the needed space in Eisenhower, as they're currently sharing their gymnasium with a cafeteria for a school with nearly 600 students. It just has not been working ideally. And yes, certainly I've spoken at length with neighbors, friends, constituents. The number one feedback I have been hearing from folks is, do we have to do this? It sounds really expensive. Can't we just wait? We just got through the pandemic. There's compelling evidence that each additional year we wait to purchase the necessary supplies and pay for the labor to build a new school, it will only get far more expensive and would force us to potentially cut back on the 5 principal parts of this bond referendum.
And do you think let's say it doesn't pass, and we're going to guess that that's about the money, about the ask was too much. Would you support trying to scale it back, go back to voters with a scaled down version, or just go for it again, or put some time in there? Or what do you think would plan B look like?
Yes, plan B, in my opinion, would be to look at the studies that have been provided to us from the architecture firm, consider if there's anything that would potentially be able to be trimmed back, and right away go for a second proposal.
Okay. What are you doing to get out in front of voters? What's been your sort of campaign strategy?
Yeah, thanks for asking. This is my first time running for an elected office. And so I've had the support of a lot of community members sharing what they've found to be most worthwhile as far as understanding the issues that really matter to folks in the district, as well as communicating their ideas. So at this point, in addition to talking with a multitude of neighbors, friends, teachers, administrators, and students, my campaign strategy has involved having small group meetings, creating a Facebook page, so you can actually find that on Kizzier for Schools, and that delineates some particular important points in regard to my campaign and my own values and motivations for running. I've produced about 100 yard signs that you'll see up in the district, and that has been a nice way for me to talk with folks in the community that I otherwise may not reach, who are on busy thoroughfares, and to find out what their opinions are. I also just recently found out I was endorsed by the Dubuque Federation of Labor. So I found that out from Tom Townsend 2 days ago. So I've been talking with some of the union representatives. I had a delightful interview with Tammy Deere of the Dubuque Educator Association, and I'm waiting to find out about an endorsement for that. And in the next couple of weekends, you very likely will see me out and about. I'll be door knocking with State Representative Lindsay James. I have a number of community groups that I'm looking to connect with. And on Wednesday, October 25th, I will participate in a forum with the League of Women Voters.
Okay.
You might see a little bit of print advertisement. I'm trying to figure out what my budget is for that compared to other monies spent, whether it's on social media or actual yard signs or flyers.
Okay. And as you look back on, the last 5 years, let's say, and you've been invested in the schools and in what the school district and the school board is doing, how do you think they've handled the issues of the last 5 years? Is there anything that they've done that maybe you would have gone a different direction, or what would you say about kind of how they've performed in the last 5 years?
I feel like the current school board treats each other with a high degree of courtesy in the face of differing opinions. And I feel like they've worked through a high number of serious issues from dealing with the pandemic and putting safety protocols in place, the need to replace their superintendent, the creation of just a brief interval strategic plan. Now they're needing another 10-year plan. There's been issues with termination recently of at one of the teachers due to behavioral concern. And so they've really had to deal with a number of things in a short time period. From what I can tell, and I haven't attended every meeting, but I've attended half a dozen meetings. The current board is doing a very nice job of committee work before they come together for the monthly broadcasted school board meetings. And any of these are accessible by the public, whether they're talking about finances and a contract or a surprise facility need that has come up. I feel like they've been respectful, not only to each other, but also to the public. There certainly have been times that gave me pause during the pandemic, not necessarily from the school board, but pause with the way that constituents were talking to the school board that made me feel a little bit guarded and protective of them. In my own clinical practice, I take care of folks with all different political beliefs, religious beliefs, and I feel like it is both important to be able to be open to new ideas and folks with different opinions from your own, but I also expect that the courteous behavior would need to continue so that those folks that have volunteered their time and effort to be on the board have enough enthusiasm to remain on the board.
I'll let my colleagues jump in. I'm sure they've got questions as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Kizzier, you mentioned early on, you were talking about, the role of a school board member and your responsibility to students first, but also teachers and administrators and so on, and about recognizing the professional experience of teachers. And then you also mentioned your need to be representative of parents. And so sometimes the educators have maybe an opinion about how education should be done, and sometimes parents have maybe a different one. And so how do you balance that, those potentially competing or conflicting points of view? Or
Yeah, thanks. I think this is a really critically important part of where a school board member should sit, because each of us is going to have our own comfort level with particular hot and button issues. Something that has come up repeatedly during the few short weeks of my campaign so far is talking about book bans and access to literature, or folks being fearful that the curriculum used may in some way harm their child or their family member. I've spoken with current President Kate Parks about this at length, and I feel like the Dubuque district is actually really doing this right. There is a appropriate channel, at least as far as for book bans, where if a parent is worried about the curriculum that their student may be exposed to, they can request that their student not be exposed to that and that it would come under review. I feel like this is a good way to honor a parent's preference and yet not put that particular individual's beliefs onto all the other students who have the right to the access to a wide range of texts by different authors who may or may not have their own beliefs or that of their family. So this is an example where folks are going to have different opinions, but we need to have ways that the board is available to talk through problems. We need to have a policy that we can follow so that parents trust the district and trust the teachers as they deliver a diverse curriculum.
I think with some of those changes in the state law that might supersede what the district's policy has been as far as, oh, you can opt out of it. I think we'll be pulling books from school, particularly, specifically, I think with any kind of depiction of a sex act.
Yeah, so I did speak with a librarian about it this week, as there was recently a library convention where this was talked about, and trying to find that balance between intellectual freedom and censorship. So I think it's a dynamic area right now, certainly something I feel engaged in and wanting to learn more, because I think that areas such as this have a chance to be very divisive, where in reality, most of the curriculum delivered through the public school system is something that most parents agree on.
To that point, and I think you had mentioned very briefly earlier, you talked about sort of recent actions by the state legislature, and I think that kind of plays in with this piece in terms of books that are allowed in school libraries and school classrooms. There certainly were a lot of actions by the legislature this spring related to education. I wonder if you had thought if there were some of those particular actions that stood out to you that are things that you think either they were right about or they were wrong about. And as a school board, what do you see as your role when it comes to sort of the state government and advocacy or talking to people? Where do you kind of see yourself fitting into that?
Yeah, so certainly I have spent time reviewing the law as I understand it. It has been changing rapidly, and I feel that the school board member is both advocate and liaison. One of my friends that signed my attestation when it was time for me to consider running, as I was collecting signatures as a concerned parent in the district, said, Kizzier, I really like you, but I suspect we might be 75% different on our beliefs. So how do I know that you're going to act exactly in the way that I would want you to act? And I feel like I can't make any exact guarantee to one individual or on one particular cause that's important to them that I will act in a specific way about a specific book, or whether there's one specific student, whether this is in relation to an LGBTQ issue, or whether this is related to things such as education regarding vaccine safety, HIV, human papillomavirus, and cervical cancer. I can, with full confidence, state that with my own medical training and my proficiency as a full-time clinician for adolescents, I have a deep fund of understanding of evidence-based medicine. I have a deep understanding of the importance of a safe, emotional climate for schools to optimize learning. At this point, living in Dubuque, if there is an emotional crisis, if there is a teenager that tries to harm themselves or does something risky, they need to be hospitalized, I'm one of the people on the team that gets called to admit this person to the hospital. And so I have a deep vested interest on staying abreast of the changing Iowa legislation, but I am still learning. This is an area where, as a doctor, I can keep practicing in a way that is evidence-based and supported by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians. But as a school board member, I will need to both listen to all constituents as well as consider the opinions and beliefs of the other folks on the board so that we can make the most informed decision to support kids.
What do you think would be the most difficult part for you personally if you were elected to the board? I mean, obviously there's, some of the challenges that come with it, and the time commitment and the study and all of the things. What do you think would be most challenging for you?
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that would bother me the most is that at this point in my career, I'm 43 years old. I've been doing medicine for a good long while. I feel like there's been enough negative energy directed towards educators and towards medical professionals of all levels. I will feel sad and frustrated if we are faced with another massive health challenge where I will have to spend the bulk of my time defending the medical profession in general. My training is what makes me unique as I run for the Dubuque Community School Board. But as I become even more publicly available as a board member, which I intend to be, it also opens me up to potential criticism. So I do have a Facebook page, I have an email, I have a phone number. These are all ways that folks can reach out to me if they are concerned or are looking to me for this expertise. But it is an area that I hope we can find common ground, and my training can be used as a vehicle to provide what I think is best for students.
People turn ugly on social media. What?
No kidding. So I didn't have Facebook until about 1 week ago. And so this is something where I check it once a day. Otherwise, I read the newspaper. I have a few websites I like to use to keep up on the latest news. So
what do you think are the biggest challenges facing the board in let's say the next 4 years? Is that what the
yeah, it is. It's a 4-year term. One, they need a new strategic plan. So our old strategic plan is coming to the end and did include creating a new middle school facility. So we need a plan. Part of that is understanding if we're meeting students' needs, both as far as college preparation, but also for skilled labor and readiness to join the workforce. Already Dubuque has made beautiful headways as far as community partnerships and the Vertex program that are growing by leaps and bounds to facilitate mentorship and after high school readiness. Dealing with getting the bond referendum passed is a critical juncture for this board. If it passes, there's going to be a lot of work to be done. If it doesn't pass, there's going to be a lot of work to get done. And I feel like I'm ready for that. These are the sort of challenges that I already spend my dinner, like sitting at the dinner table talking about with my husband and my children and my neighbors and the parents of my families and my own children. And so I think those are the two areas that the most effort needs to be spent, at least in the next 1 year.
When going back to the bond issue briefly, one of the concerns that we hear, this board said we are committed to not raise the tax rate. This will be, it's not going to impact your taxes. But this is a 10-year plan. Come in a matter of weeks, we'll have 2 new members on the board. 2 years from now, we could have a majority of the board be new.
It's true.
We could have bigger financial problems where, I mean, how do you feel about that commitment to, nope, we said we're not going to raise taxes. We're not going to do that.
I agree. So I spent a fair amount of time talking with Kevin Kelleher through the district and trying to understand the mechanics of how the money is acquired and spent. As I understand it, the way that this is completed that doesn't raise taxes is through the current levies that we already have. We're spending a fair amount of the budget trying to deal with very aged facilities. If that money is instead directed into a new, more energy-efficient building, it will serve us well for the long run because of the money saved, not spent on 100-year-old properties. I do think there's a couple things to think about in this. One, we are waiting to find out how vouchers impact the public school system. I feel like money for public schools should not be going to private schools. I feel that the current services provided by public schools, including special education, are vital to the success of the community, and that we don't quite know exactly what's happening with the numbers of students potentially shifting between public and private. So that's something I'm eager to learn more about. And I do think that although the taxes will not go up directly from the bond referendum, it is possible that as property taxes creep up over the next decade, folks may notice more total dollars going to projects such as this, but otherwise they would be going to the maintenance of outdated older facilities. And so it makes sense to me. Currently I participate in running my own private practice. I'd rather pay for it now and get my biggest bang for my buck than wait 5 years and only be able to have half the space or not as high quality of materials or be stuck in a project that's taking too long to get done.
Is there anything else, Sarah, that we haven't asked you about that is important to you or you feel is important for voters to know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for asking. I think one of the most important things is just understanding that for me currently, I have a beautiful day job. I love my clinic practice. My children are doing beautifully in Dubuque public schools. My own parents were both public school teachers. My dad taught shop, later designing his curriculum to be technology education. My mom was a home ec teacher. And even as they retired and kind of moved on, they raised me in the mindset of being thoughtful about what's happening in the school system and giving back to serve your community. At this point, I feel like I'm ready to run. I'm excited about being able to participate in the Dubuque Community Schools right now. They've got a new superintendent. They need a 10-year plan. They need to get this bond referendum passed. And I'm just really energized and excited to be part of all of that.
That's great. Any closing comments from either of you guys? Or okay. Okay. Well, we really appreciate your time today, and this is of course for our editorial pages, but our reporter will also be reaching out, a news reporter, probably Elizabeth Kelsey.
Yeah, I spoke with her a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Yep. So she does most of the heavy lifting on the education beat, and she will be doing profiles for the news pages in here before long, because we'll get people with the voting starting so early. So that'll be another separate conversation. But
Sounds great.
yeah, well, we appreciate you making time in your busy day, and best of luck to you the rest of the way.
Hey, thank you very much. If you need to reach me in any way, you can reach me by email, by phone, or through my Facebook page, which is Kizzier for Schools.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.